Welcome to the live streaming event right here in Northport, Florida. I'm actually sitting on the side of the road in Georgia, but I've got a very special guest in the house, Commissioner Phil Stokes of the city of Northport. How you doing there, Phil?
I'm good, John.
So,
Good
how
to
are
see
things
you.
going? How good to see you too. How are things going at City Hall?
Well, it's another budget season cranking up, so we're doing pretty good. Staff's been busy at work for a couple of months now, and we had our first budget workshop this past week, and there's a lot to do this year.
Absolutely. And how would you highlight what you guys are going through for the citizens of Northport?
Well, like we've been doing for the last handful of years, trying to manage the growth that's been going on in the city. Trying to keep our taxes as low as we possibly can. Manage the growth as best we can, build our commercial end of the city, and at the same time, continue to provide the high quality of services everybody's used to, and finding a way to squeeze a few dollars out to work on the infrastructure projects. That there's just so much to catch up with and so many projects that need addressing. So, little by little, we do what we can with the resources we have.
So we've got some watchers out there. I want to remind you while you're watching, if you type in questions, comments, I will put them up. You can ask direct questions. You don't have to just count on me for that. I would highly encourage you to do that. If you're a business, I saw Diane Carr. Hi, Diane. And she's a sponsor. She's scrolling across the bottom. Diane's an asset to the program and to the organization itself. Please reach out to her if you have any needs there. But if you can use your Facebook page that way, it also gives Commissioner Stokes some insight on what you guys are thinking and the questions you might ask. So it's a town hall meeting that's open for discussion. So let's talk about the budget. Oh, first question of the day, Robin Sanfencente. Good afternoon, gentlemen. Commissioner Stokes, if you had to pick one important topic other than taxes facing the community, what would it be?
That's easy. Infrastructure, and infrastructure. There are so many projects aside from trying to replace, some of the city facilities that were damaged back in Hurricane Ian, which we are still in the process of doing. There are just so many. There's the ongoing water structures and bridges. There's, repairs and maintenance on facilities that, just really have been neglected for years and years. And so, to me, that's probably the highest priority. The growth is so fast here in the city. We're still continuing to grow well beyond anywhere else in Southwest Florida. And in order to do it, we need to try to make sure the infrastructure is in as best a shape as possible. And there's some areas we're just totally restricted in, but certainly infrastructure.
Well, and infrastructure's I think infrastructure has been a problem with Northport for a while. We had all these roads, but we had two lane roads, and so a lot of our roads now are being developed because it has to support the traffic flow. Water and sewer has to be talked about. Uh, the biggest part of the infrastructure I see, and maybe you can talk about this too, is the four corners, which is really eight corners out at 75 at Sumter and Toledo Blade.
Yep. Well, you know, there's been a bunch of projects like that have been in the works for years and years. I mean, price widening's the primary example, and finally we're well underway on that project. It took the hospital really breaking ground for FDOT to finally get to the point where new lights and access and ingress roads are being put in at Sumter and Toledo Blade. Um, there's In the short term, there's a lot of little, not little, but projects, infrastructure projects we can affect that would help the connectivity and the transportation. But we can't build a lot of new roads. There's just not the space to do it. Part of the long range plan will be to attract enough new business, and better paying jobs that'll come along with those businesses to try to keep people here in the city. With, as we all know, 80-90% of the working population leaves the city, and that just puts so much pressure on our roads. If we can keep 10 or 20% more of them here in the city working, that'll be huge. If we can get our solid waste transfer station built over the next couple of years, we'll keep trucks off the road. With some of the small changes occurring up in the Welland Park area, we'll be able to keep the buses off of River Road and 41 when the new high school opens. So there's a myriad of things that are being worked on that benefit multiple areas of our city. But anything we can do to help ease the burden on the roads is critical. It just is. There's nowhere to build new roads, so we have to expand a few of them, and we have to find a way to, at some point in time, Southwest Florida is going to have to look at some sort of a mass transit. There's got to be some ways to skin this cat, and it's going to be bigger and involve many more parties other than just the city of Northport.
Another question from Robin. Uh, is there any kind of talks taking place with FDOT regarding adding additional lanes to 75 within Sarasota County?
There's
Guys,
some up in the county, more north and mid county. To my knowledge, nothing down here in our area around our interchanges, other than the lighting and the ramps at Sumter and Toledo. There's, there's an awful lot of projects that FDOT works on, and it takes a lot to be able to get them to focus their attention here, i.e., take this Yorkshire exchange. We desperately need another exchange, but until Charlotte County and Northport spends a good amount of money working on some of the infrastructure areas that are affected by a new interchange, FDOT's not moving till we move. Seeing economic development out east would do a lot to help urge them to move up their timetable. But in order to do that, we have to be able to have a methodology for building the infrastructure, and it's going to come in time, hopefully from a special district out there, whereby the property owners, landowners will be able to finance their infrastructure, because without that area can't get developed. It's those kinds of things that light a fire under FDOT.
and FDOT's not, they're not dragging their feet. It's a timing thing.
That's
Um,
right.
and I was out Toledo Blade on Saturday, and I got to tell you, there's going to be some major wrecks out there. There really are, because people are coming off of 75, they're getting frustrated, and they're trying to turn in front of people taking Toledo Blade out to 75 and turning left and going north on 75. That whole turn area right there, they're actually brave enough now where they're driving out and cutting people off making the left turn.
Yep.
That happened Saturday. I couldn't believe what I was watching.
Yeah, it's a
So
mess there.
it's going to be really bad. Sorry about that. The are we counting accidents and deaths when we get with FDOT on that? Do you know?
We do, they track it. I mean, look at how many years there's been problems, but there's problems all over. I mean, let's face it, you get out on 75, regardless of the exit, the setup at the exit ramps, all the way from Fort Myers all the way up. I mean, people are going 80 to 100 plus miles an hour. They're cutting in and out. they're in the left-hand lanes when they should be moving over. There's trucks in lanes that don't belong there. I mean, you can only do so much. Well, people need to be a little more conscious of the fact that they're surrounded by a machine that can kill people and kill themselves, and they need to slow down and drive defensively, but they don't. And, I don't blame it all on them because certainly the infrastructure can stand improving. But, you know, I don't care how great a road is. I don't care how safe the road itself is, how wide it is. If people don't drive with some concern for safety, there's going to continue to be problems. I mean,
And Robin adds in another great point. And I think this is probably the ideal time to talk about it, which is the evacuation routes.
there you go.
Um, this is going to be a real problem in the real near future, if not now. Because
It is. Well,
it's go ahead.
well, look, and there's a lot of levels of government that are focused on this. I mean, a good example, people are complaining, there's a group of people who have concerns, and there's some genuine concerns, that they have regarding the Minnesota Beach connector that's going out the back of Welland Park along Minnesota Beach Road out to 776. So,
Yep.
okay, it is cutting through some undeveloped land, and again, it is part of an overall sprawling development. But at the same time, there's a new high school opening where close to 50 buses a day, a couple times a day, are going to be dumping out onto River Road and onto 41. There are kids being bused from Lemon Bay. There are kids being bused from Venice. There are kids being bused from Legacy Northport area. I mean, that road is going to take enormous pressure off of River Road and 41. River Road's almost, it's getting very close to being finished on the direction down towards 75. On the way to Englewood, they're going to move right in and do that. There is an understanding between the parties, and the financing is pretty much all there to be able to widen all the way up to Englewood. Part of that's going to help the evacuation routes. All of it's been raised 6 to 8 feet. That's been built already. That's going to be huge. There are retaining ponds everywhere to help capture water. And the ability to split traffic between 776, 41, and 75 in the event of an emergency is going to be a godsend for Englewood, parts of Northport, parts of Welland Park, if they need to get out of there. There's only so much. We are a little trapped in the sense that there's state forests, there's Deer Prairie Preserve. There's a number of areas that, we're just nobody's going to be able to build through and put new roads in. But, the key is to have other ways to get out of Northport, and there aren't all that many. There really aren't all that many. Not from the legacy end, there isn't. I mean, where do you go? How are you going to take Toledo Blade through the Carlton Preserve? How are you going to take, you know, Price through what, the Deer Prairie Reserve? Like, that's just unrealistic to think that we're going to be able to build roads through that. FDOT doesn't even have those projects on their radar screen 10 or 20 years out. Those are preserved areas. So what do we have? You know, maybe there could be some access roads built where along Tropicare in that area, widen Tropicare. That's great. The estates people just love that. So, there's all these issues. All this stuff should have been thought out 10, 15, 20 years ago when it could have been done, and it could have been done certainly more cost effectively. Now we're just going to have to work the best with what we've got, which isn't much, to tell you the truth.
Alan McEwen. Hi, Alan. I hope you're feeling better, buddy. They took all the wetlands and filled them in with back in with Welland Park and dug retention ponds and other areas. Anything and everything that was done out there was done completely wrong.
Well, I would say that, it all depends on the view you have. Done wrong. Uh, we haven't had any flooding here in Welland Park, and we don't have it because all the homes were built up, significantly up. All the developments were, and all the retaining ponds that were built are, for the most part, all interconnected. They provide not only areas for water to run off and be captured, but to be recycled and reused for irrigation and other purposes. So actually, I would say the opposite. I would say that West Villages, Welland Park, is an example of how planned communities address stormwater management and do so in a way that benefits not only the existing development that's being built here in Welland, but also in a lot of the surrounding areas. The biggest problem we have with flooding is still in those areas of Northport where everything's single family lots, and as more and more building takes place on those lots, there's really nothing legally requiring any individual property owner to do anything in the way of stormwater management. So when you build your house and you build your lanai and your pool and your driveway and everything else, where's the water go? In your neighbor's yards, in everybody else's yards. That's the biggest challenge we face in Northport. The big planned communities, the law requires these developments to build up and to maintain a stormwater management system that prevents any greater flow of water, stormwater, after an event than before. And, like I say, we haven't had a problem here.
So we got a follow up. I'm going to let you read that one.
I have property south of Welland Park, the property that surrounds Mayaca Pines Golf Course, and they raised all that up around me 52 inches, causing water to where it could not drain in normal direction towards the river and left me in a fishbowl. Well, first of all, Mayaca Pines is not in Northport. Second of all, while I don't know all the particulars of that area, I know that with the development that's going on there, in unincorporated Sarasota County, there's still a long way to go before a lot of that's done. So, you know, I can tell you this, by law, and it's tracked and it's monitored and it's followed, is that no development can allow for any excess flow of water, stormwater, after their development than before. So, for those areas, there's still probably a lot of work to go. And I wouldn't doubt that as River Road gets widened up that way, just like in and around the Welland Park area, there will be a plethora of retention ponds that hold enormous amounts of water to stem the flow. And there'll be plenty of studies and plenty of analysis that goes into how to make sure that some of the underdeveloped and undeveloped areas of the forest areas and along Mayaca are not affected environmentally. I mean, there's a lot of hurdles for these developers to have to go through to make sure that they're not contributing to a stormwater problem, but rather helping to mitigate it.
I'm going to give a shout out to Jason Esther out there, Mr. Jason Esther. How you doing, buddy? And everybody who's clicking likes and loves on this, I appreciate it. Please share this information. It's valuable to get out. As these developments happen in unincorporated Sarasota County, how do we communicate with how does that communication go? Because Welland Park, while most of it is Northport, there is some unincorporated Sarasota County in there too. Are we in talks about all of that across the board?
Yeah. I mean, for anybody who's been following a little bit about, local politics, county politics, you'll see that Sarasota County's grown astronomically, a big part of it being Northport, but historically, the county has always struggled a little to help provide the services and address some of the needs of the southern part of the county, the unincorporated areas of Sarasota County. And there are challenges to doing that. It's a cost, especially currently where the county itself is experiencing, some fiscal challenges. Northport has for years been Johnny on the spot, first on the spot when it comes to public safety and other public works issues. We're there. There's pretty much a handshake understanding with the county. They'll help us, we'll help them. Problem is down here in South County, we're the ones on the spot when a public emergency occurs, when there's accidents, when there's fires. Our guys are there. Our team is there. Um, in time, with the infrastructure that will go in little by little by little, for a lot of those unincorporated areas, the ability to voluntarily annex into the city would be to their betterment. Um, it would, for the city, well, one, for them, it will give them a higher level and a more consistent level of services. For the city of Northport and all its present taxpaying citizens, it will be it'll be a win situation because right now it costs us money to service some of those areas. If they were to be part of our city, some of those unincorporated areas, Northport will receive millions of dollars worth of property taxes. If we're providing the services, why not be able to enjoy the tax benefits from those property owners? It only seems fair, not to mention for any new development. I mean, some people are aware that there's a big section of up around River Road in the Winchester area that is planned to be annexed into the city. It's already been approved for development years ago. It's all part of the master plan. It's owned by Madam Nee Builders, developers. They're going to build, regardless. They are going to build, and Englewood, unincorporated Englewood, really doesn't have the capability to provide the services. Northport would. If Northport does, why shouldn't it get all the tax revenues from it?
Right.
Statistically, we've looked at if that area, I'll use that as an example. If Winchester gets annexed in, you're talking about 3,600 acres that lies in Englewood. With River Road widening and the other infrastructure plans there, some of the concerns over that will be mitigated. But think of what that will bring to Northport. It'll bring somewhere in the order of, I think the number was 13, $14 million a year in property taxes. It'll bring $181 million in impact fees. If the developer fronts the money, which they plan on doing, to develop the infrastructure in that area, and then those assets are Northport's and the impact fees flow to Northport, they can be utilized to help service the cost of infrastructure. It doesn't cost the existing West Villages taxpayers one dime, doesn't cost legacy Northport taxpayers one dime, and the net result will be millions of dollars that come into the city of Northport to help us. There's also some 500 acres of planned commercial out in that area of Englewood, which Northport sorely needs to help balance its tax base between residential and commercial. So, sometimes we look at this stuff and you say, well, all this development and God, on top of it, they want to add more to Northport. Why? That's crazy. It's not crazy. It's actually part of the plan in order to create a stronger Northport, a more balanced Northport. A lot of thoughts going into how to do this and do it right. And certainly there's nothing anybody's going to be doing about stopping 7 to 9 thousand homes. They're going in. That's already a done deal. It's a question of, is it going to be part of unincorporated Sarasota County where that new development is going to be challenged when it comes to services, or and Northport left out of the tax base, out of the tax revenues, or does Northport step up and do what'll be in their best interest, in our best interest? So, there's a lot of work, a lot of talk. Nothing's etched in stone yet, but I can tell you this: what is a fact is nobody can stop that development. It's been approved years ago and it's going to happen. What we got to make sure is it gets done the right way, and it gets done in a way that doesn't hurt Northport, but helps Northport. And for the people who live in West Villages who might say, oh, this is just what we need: more cars, more traffic, more congestion. You know what? You're going to get it anyway. I live here. We are going to get it anyway because there's no way to stop it. But I'll tell you this, I like that there'll be 9,000 more rooftops to help pay the cost of maintaining West Villages after the developer is long gone. That will be huge for us. Some things you just can't stop, so you have to manage.
I got a question from Jason Esther. Hi, buddy. Um, for lots in the AC10 zoning, any chance to get some changes for single family homes again? What is happening with that zoning and what is the goal for that zoning?
Good question, Jason. You know, the city has been looking at that whole area out east. It's part Activity Center 6 and 10. That is the area where we think the largest economic development is going to take place commercially and light industrially. And we know there are residential areas in and around the perimeters of those activity centers. What will ultimately happen, my belief of what will ultimately happen is that that will become a special district that city staff is presently investigating and working on. That will Creating a special district there will enable the landowners to be able to finance the infrastructure they need to be able to develop there. For the residential properties and neighborhoods, I imagine that there's going to be another look see at some of those areas to see what might be carved out, what might be remanaged a little bit in our overall ULDC blueprint, because we don't want to hurt anybody. If there are areas, residential areas that we can better protect and insulate from some of the development that's going to take place, we will. It's still far enough out there where it's hard to answer that question with some specificity. But I will tell you, it's on city staffs and our radar screens. We know as that area grows, there's going to be some pain for residential properties that abut them or are part of those two activity centers. And we'll try to deal with it as best we can and see the best way we can come up with a good balance there, because those were always that area was always going to be, the commercial area for the city of Northport. And the necessity to generate that kind of commercial revenue to help keep our residential property taxes low. It's just essential. We just got to do it in a humane way, in a way that exercises some common sense and sensitivity to the people who live in and around there. So I know I didn't answer it with hard fact because there isn't any yet. It's just, you know, the city certainly is not ignorant, nor is it ignoring, you know, those concerns. So I hope that helps a little bit, and more to come on it, because over the next year you're going to see a lot of discussion about that area and the special district we're trying to create.
So I got a question from Debbie McDowell, and I'll let you read it because it has to do with the annexing.
What happened to the phrase residential costs more? Oh, it's interesting. For years, we staff has always made the comment that the cost of providing services to a residential property cost more than what we bring in revenue. Well, actually, the real statement was for single family quarter and half acre platted land, there is no doubt that it costs us more to provide basic services than the property tax revenues that are generated from those properties. The other thing that weighs in on that factor is property value. Properties in the couple of $100,000 range up to about 350, 400,000, you know, the cost of services versus the tax revenues brought in are very close. And the lower the property value, the less revenues cover cost. But when you look at what's happening in Welland Park and in the proposed Winchester annexation, we're talking properties well in excess of those numbers. for the most part, those properties, the single family properties there, will clearly generate more revenue than expense. And the fact that these developments like West Village is existing now and the New Winchester will have a multitude and a plethora of housing types, from condos to villas to townhouses to starter homes to huge palatial homes. What you'll have is a higher density blend that cuts down on the cost per rooftop. And so, the simple statement, it costs more to supply services than we bring in, it really only is a statement that is germane to or applicable to under $350,000 single family platted homes, of which there are a lot in the city of Northport. So all this planned development actually helps the problem. It helps mitigate the problem because clearly West Villages generates, with its property values and its higher densities, generate enormous revenues over the cost of service. And that's part of what goes into good planning. We got saddled by general development with a whole city of single family platted properties. it how anybody could have ever thought that they would have been financially solvent over the years is beyond me, but I don't think they were thinking about that, just about how much money they could make selling lots.
I was going to say the expansion of their wallet. I've got a question from Robin. With technology advances, especially in AI, what is your opinion on allowing a data center within the city limit?
What a great question, Robin. I'll tell you, because there's been a lot of articles around. Actually, you know, uh, the problem with data centers for any community or county is the enormous amount of power they require. And from what I read, and I'm reading probably a lot of the same stuff you all are, um, the pressures it puts on the rest of a geographic area in and around where data centers are going have presented some real challenges with regard to providing utility services. So I would say that before Northport entertains any proposals to build a data center in the city, we take a real hard look at the power requirements and the power capabilities we have before we go thinking all the dollar signs that kind of a business might generate, because there's a quality of life and there's a concern over just basic utility resources that I think really has to be thought through. And I think that's a challenge that we're starting to, we've been reading about in a variety of venues. So it'll be interesting. Northport, is a, to me, a good target community for that kind of a project. I'm just not sure it would be right for us, and I don't have a clue right now what impact it might have on this city. But I can tell you this, before I would vote for it, I'd sure want to understand how it might impact everybody else around the area. It's a typically uh, low, has low requirements as far as manpower and staffing and all that stuff, but it does take enormous utility. I mean, it takes enormous power and electric. So yet to be seen. I don't know of anything that's come before us as such regarding it that I'm aware of. Nothing's come to commission anyway yet.
And then Chuck says, question: what do you believe will be the city's course of action if the property tax is eliminated?
The rumor I heard was that Chuck's going to make up some of the difference.
Yeah,
Am I not right there?
yeah,
You know, it's funny, when they started the session, I did a debate, not a debate, but a discussion panel up at Tiger Bay Club in Sarasota, and I said it would not surprise me a whole lot if our legislators worked their way through the entire session without really coming up with a final plan. And here we are, the first session's over, and we have nothing. We had a House that passed one bill on property tax reform. The Senate did nothing. The governor didn't force the function, but here we are, end of session one. The budget's not balanced for the state, so second session's bound to do that, and they'll work through that. Then there's redistricting. Who knows whether they're going to get to property tax reform? Uh, you know, nobody that I've talked to up there, and I did go up, we went up for a better part of a week. We talked with our electeds from our area, and nobody has a solution as to how property taxes would be replaced. The cost of our public safety in Northport exceeds the cost of, basically, it exceeds the amount of homesteaded property tax the city receives. So if we lost 10 to 20 million dollars worth of property tax money, the biggest area that would suffer would be our public safety. To say as a state government that you were going to look to cut or eliminate property tax and you can't touch public safety is, I mean, to me, it's just not realistic. And when asked, the answer we got was, you all figure it out. Picture that. You all will figure it out. So the state will wear the white hat by cutting or eliminating property tax, and the cities will be left and the counties will be left with trying to figure out how to generate the revenue to continue to supply the high quality services that citizens have come to expect. I dare say that there's no way to make this work. And even if they do a special session for it, they're going to have to figure out what else replaces this or makes up most of it. If you raise sales tax is not a stable form of tax. If we had a recession, if we have another pandemic, if tourism falls off, we have some national catastrophes, those dollars dry up. How are they going to pay for schools? How are they going to pay for public safety? Property tax is the most stable form of tax. None of us like paying it, and I hear that. But why shouldn't the person that owns $1 million home pay a lot more in taxes than the person that owns a $250,000 home? Maybe that's heresy to say, but the truth is it's a fairer tax and it's stable. And if your property value goes up and you have to pay a little more, the saving grace is you're building equity in your property. So, to come back to Robin's question, since I painted the background, was what happens if they do? If they do, we will do what we're already planning to do this year. We're going to cut this budget, and we're going to do it in a combination of reducing government size and services. How much is really going to depend on what staff comes back with. The goal this year for us is to cut back the budget, tighten it up based on current revenues, not projected future, but to tighten our belts to create enough of a spread so that we generate some additional revenue without raising taxes, but by cutting costs to be able to service some of the capital improvement projects we've desperately needed to do. Nobody should have a problem with us borrowing money or utilizing savings to build back our infrastructure as long as we're not raising your property taxes. And conversely, on the other side is, what does that really do for every one of us who has to, get up every day and pay for our services? The goal is going to be to look at all our user fees, our district fees, our enterprise fees, and to see what, if anything, we could do to roll them back a little bit. We've been raising them year after year because they were well below what others were paying. Now, from what we can see, we think we're a little high. And so this year's budget's going to attempt to put a few dollars back in people's pockets from reduction of user fees, district and enterprise. Hold the line on property tax flat. Property tax rate will stay flat is our plan. And to tighten the belt even more, so we set aside some money for infrastructure. That MO, that approach will be the same approach we take in the event property taxes get cut or terminated. We're going to have to then dramatically look at what services should government be providing? If you look at Doge says that there's like four areas: public safety, infrastructure, um, I'm trying to think of what the other two are. I mean, all the quality of life amenities and departments that help support those quality of life amenities are not considered by Doge to be important, not important, but necessary for government to pay for and taxpayers pay for. I can't imagine a world in which we cut back on our parks and our civic centers. We got the youngest population in the county, and people moved here because of the quality of life and the character of our city. So it'll be real interesting to see how this plays out. Um, there are areas, there are services that government provides today that I think might be outsourced. Why do you need a gym in a, I mean, and this is Phil Stokes speaking, why do you need a gym in a community center when you can pay $10 a month to go to the private sector? That frees up a lot of space. That space translates into a lack of having to spend more taxpayer dollars to do other things to accommodate some of our growth. There are consolidations. There are areas where the county and the city overlap. And they've done so because the city felt it could provide its citizens with a higher quality of service. Take social services, take emergency services. There may come a time where collectively we have to look at sharing those opportunities or those challenges, I say, with our neighboring communities and our county. Um, if you don't have the money, you just can't do some things. And I fear that if true property tax reform occurs and municipalities and counties lose tens of millions of dollars in tax revenues, that's what's going to happen. And maybe people will be okay with less service. Maybe they will. But I'm guessing that as they've grown so accustomed to the services and the high quality of services they've gotten, they're not going to be too happy about giving them up. So somewhere there's a balance in there. And whatever electeds are sitting on the dais in Northport, in Venice, in Sarasota County, and everywhere else is going to face those same challenges. They are not easy to address. There's no magic bullet that's going to solve their problems. They're going to come with pain and they're going to come with compromise. That's the only way I know to deal with it. So I am crossing my fingers and hoping every day that the state outlasts the governor. Once the governor's out of office, that the state representatives will turn around and focus more on how to fix our infrastructure throughout the state, okay, and help manage development and think about the need to allow local governments to have more control over their own land development without usurping local authority and making it more difficult for us to control or manage growth. We have a whole plethora of 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 barriers, of rules, of guidelines, and in the ULDC rewrite that we've not been able to enforce because state preemption has prevented us from doing that. And so, there's a lot of challenges that go along with all this, and with a shifting landscape at the state level, it just makes trying to manage things at the local level that much more difficult and challenging. But I can tell you this, it's what we do every single day. We get up and try to deal with the reality of what we have and the resources we have, and we try to continue to do the best for the most. It is not an easy thing for all the people, including myself and others, who say it, I don't like this, I don't like that, this should be different, this should be, well, bring the solutions, because I got to tell you, there's not as many solutions as you think. And there's so many restrictions and barriers and hurdles to overcome. But I can tell you this, we never stop doing it. And it doesn't matter who's elected. Every one of us who get elected have to deal with this same challenges. You see two new commissioners who are little by little realizing the incredible challenges that it takes to run a city of our size, growing the way we're growing, with some of the challenges we have to face, and both internally and externally. I
So,
was sure a long-winded way answering that question.
yeah. So this is more of a statement, I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, Debbie, how the narrative changes to suit the needs of the day.
Yeah,
Um,
I mean, that's another way of saying that life is full of change. Things continue to morph and change and reshape, and good government learns how to adapt. That's what we do. We learn to adapt. What's true 2 years ago may not be true today. And what we have to do is address it honestly with a big picture perspective. We just have to do that and try to not only look at what's right in front of our face, but also what's out there into the future and how what we do and the decisions we make may affect what happens down the road.
and I've got one from Pam Kotars. I'll go ahead and let you read that one.
You stated that Winchester Ranch will bring in more property taxes. What happens if the property taxes are reduced or eliminated if the referendum passes? Well, if the referendum, for property tax, um, well, I would say, not to be flip, but if property tax goes away, either in significant part or in total, I would say that the challenges that we face in Northport and every other municipality and county will face will dwarf any impact Winchester will have. And while, uh, it will, if I had to guess, if this were to actually get pushed through, it would not be long before you would see state legislation drafted to create special districts for police and parks and recs and all kinds of areas of our local governments to provide additional revenue resources. That would have to be done at the state level. I mean, the city can't create taxes. It can't, you know, create a sales tax. It can't, you know, uh, do some of the things that a state could do, but we can't create a special taxing district for police. It's a state thing. But if and when they do this, and not just rural communities are going to Tallahassee with their hands out, but major cities and areas of our state are doing the same thing. The state will be forced to try to fix the mistake they made. And when they go ahead and do that, they may make it worse, but they may make it better. Make no doubt, other than the federal government who can print money, states and counties and cities can't. So you mark my word, if property tax goes away, the state will find ways to tax its citizens in a fashion that makes up some, if not all, of the difference. So the question is, which pockets it coming out of? The local municipality is very, very limited in what it can do to raise additional revenues. It can try to grow a commercial base. It can shift some tax burden to businesses, which is a good and possibly a bad thing. It can raise some of its fees, but property tax is the backbone of local municipal government. And without it, the state, we won't be alone. The state will be forced to do something, which may turn out to be worse than what we had in the beginning. So I don't know that I know the answer. Everybody's trying to see that crystal ball, but I can tell you this, that on the surface, assuming that there will be a workout in some way, shape, or form, that annexation will generate a net positive for us. Legacy Northport won't be affected at all. Hell, any cars that ride through Legacy, any traffic, any concerns, we're going to get anyway because they're going to build it. The developers already have the land rights. The law is on their side. They can build. There is no way to stop them. It's a question of where they're going to do it. In unincorporated, where the county benefits, or in Northport, where we can benefit. So even if we don't get as much revenue out of it as we would have hoped, we'll get some. And to me, I feel much more comfortable where we have the ability to get our arms around geography that's sandwiched in and around Northport, so we can see it's done in a proper fashion and in a well-managed fashion and in an environmentally sensitive fashion, and all the other ways in which Northport, I think, excels, because we do care about all those things, and we do the best to create balance in the development that's taking place.
So I've got a primary question from Chuck English. He says, Commissioner Stokes, it appears that you're being primaried by two other candidates. What do you think about that?
I think it's great. We our whole goal when we adjusted compensation for commissioners was to try to attract more people. And I dare say a couple of the candidates may well have that in mind when they threw their hat in the ring. The good thing is, I think it's awful for any elected to be able to walk into a second term um, unopposed, and so I'm glad that there's people out there who have an interest. And I've said it as I've started the campaign out there, that when you run the first time, you can spend a lot of time telling everybody what your plans are, what you're going to do, what you think can happen, all the great changes you're going to make to the city. When you run the second time, you have to tell people what you did. And so, it'll be an interesting campaign season, because many of the things you hear from new candidates is, we got to control growth. We got to stop this. We got to change that. And then they get elected and they find out, holy mackerel, people actually have property rights here. And there's laws to protect people who own property, and they're allowed to do certain things. So, for me, experience matters. Over the past 4 years, while I would love to take credit for every great thing that happened in this city, I can't. We're a team. The commissions that I have shared the dais with in the last 4 years have been a great group of people who have worked hard to move this city. And while many of the things that have happened here in recent years started even well before my tenure on the commission, we've got a hospital going up at Sumter and 75 that's going to create and launch a South County medical mecca that will be enormously beneficial to our city. We're about to see FDOT finally start to clean up the two interchanges. We got Price Boulevard widened. We created a natural resource department that, when I was running the first time and I sat down with folks, environmentally concerned folks who said, I said, what's the one thing you'd love to see us do? They said, create a natural resource department, more than just one person in the building department who gets dwarfed. We need, with all this growth, a group of people who are looking out for the environment to see that development is done in a sensible way. We've done that. We've seen all kinds of new businesses. Roughly 75 to 100 small and mid-sized businesses come to the city. We're working on a special district out east to build a commercial zone. Despite the contention over rezoning the city, we recreated a blueprint to allow the city to grow commercially. Is it perfect? No. Will it be modified? Will it be tweaked? Of course it will. It's a living document, but it set the
Yep.
stage to be able to develop the city in a healthy way. So all these things that took place over the last 4 years, am I solely responsible? Should I get all the credit? Yep, I should, but I can't, because it wouldn't be fair. So I'd say, bring it on. Let's talk about the subjects that affect the city. Let's see what my two opponents have to say about how they would solve the problems, how they would address the problems, not that they commiserate with the problems, but how they would deal with them. And you'll hear from me, and then people will make their decisions as to who they think could best represent the city. And that's the way the system works. And, I respect that. I honor it. And I will support the will of the voters out there. And, we'll see how November shapes up.
So one last thing here. We've got a couple minutes left, and then I've got to get back on the road. But Mike, thanks for sending your, um, I think, question kind of statement. But go ahead and read that, Phil, and we'll end it after
Yeah.
that.
I'm more than happy to pay my share of tax outside property taxes, so long as my elderly parents never have the threat of having their bought and paid for house taken away. You know what? You get no argument from me on that. And there ought to be protections to make sure. It goes even further than just that. It goes to, why should someone who gets sick or has an accident, why should their livelihood and all they've accumulated be at risk too? So, there's a number of things that can happen to people that affect their lives. And I would say that anything and everything government can do to help protect seniors who have amassed a homestead and want it protected so it isn't yanked out from under them because of either a catastrophe or an illness or a specific event, or the fact that government electeds, make some kind of decision, yeah, I think everything we can do to protect our seniors and protect those who have worked so hard for everything they have, I think that's important. And if there's anything I can do to do that, I will. I mean, it goes without saying, hey, I'm one of them.
That's fantastic. Well, I appreciate everyone joining us today and really sharing like this. And those of you who have done that already, I appreciate you so much. Please continue to support. And the next show is basically the city of Northport. They're going to be sending me a guest here shortly, and I'll have that posted as quick as I can get staff to give me the guest that's up next. But we have every third Monday of the month is the city commissioners. The first Monday of the month is the fire department or the police department. Then the fire department is the second Monday of the month, and then the city is in a rotation with department heads. We've had really good feedback. Lindy Gates was on, talked about what they did. We had our grant writers on, talked about what they do. We've had Parks and Rec. We've had the Aquatic Center. Lots of information, lots of good information to get out to your neighbors, especially as we're coming up on hurricane season again. The new AOC, we've had Stacey Aliso and her team be part of this. So I really want to give a shout out to everybody who's joined us, but I want to thank you for taking your time out, Phil, and taking all these.
I want to thank not only you, John, but everybody who came on and asked some great questions. These are the questions everyone should be asking. Challenge us. These are the things we're thinking about, and it'll give people some comfort to know that, we do have our eye on the ball. We are concerned about the same things you are. So thank you for asking your questions. Spread the word. And most of all, let people know that elections do matter. We have a primary coming up for school board, and we've got some other local elections. Mine may be one in August. If the three of us stay in the ring, there's a primary before it goes to November, unless someone gets over that 50%. But please vote. Make sure you vote. Make sure everyone you know votes. Voting matters. That's the report card.
And that's a great report card too. Thank you so much, Phil. I appreciate you, buddy.
Thank you, everybody. Take care and be safe.
All right. Y'all have a great week, and we'll talk to you next Monday. Bye-bye now.